welcome to episode 229 of School Librarians United. I'm your host, Amy Herman. This podcast is dedicated to the issues and challenges school librarians face every day. As a school librarian wrapping up my 16th year, I knew I wanted a podcast which addressed the nuts and bolts of running a successful library program. I don't claim to have the answers, but I hope that this is a platform to share resources and exchange ideas. Now is a perfect time to mention that all the ideas and opinions expressed in this podcast by myself, my interview guests, and listeners who reach out to the podcast are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. When incorporating research, I always make sure to cite my sources. So whether you are a novice or a veteran school librarian, this podcast does something for you. I'd like to extend a very special welcome this week to listeners Christine in Connecticut, Diana in Florida, and Anne in Maryland. I also wanted to give a big thank you to my weekly Clubhouse get-together hosted by the boss librarian, Casey Boyd. Just wrapped up its second year, and I look forward to this weekly chat on Sundays at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, along with moderators Stacy Nunn, Steve Tatro, and Amanda Jones. Friends, I welcome you and all listeners to join us during the school year when we get together at our Clubhouse meetings. You can also reach me on Facebook. On Twitter, my handle is @LMS_United, or the email address schoollibrariansunited@gmail.com. If you include your mailing address, I'll be sure to send you a podcast sticker. Friends, if you haven't heard episode 224, I announced a brand new sponsorship with Literati Book Fairs, and now is a chance to hear from one of Literati's team members, Aubrey. Hey, Aubrey, welcome back to the podcast.
Hi, Amy. Thanks. Happy to be back.
So, Aubrey, remind listeners, what is your job at Literati?
Of course. I am the curator, so I get to choose all the lovely books that you see at the fair and in our boxes.
You know, Aubrey, I think that when I think about the book fair, and I remember families coming, and I'm very aware that they put a lot of thought into the books that they want to buy because they are adding books to their home libraries. And I know, as a parent whose kid was shopping at a book fair, and as somebody who regularly attended them, I was always concerned that what I was purchasing was going to last, not just through my first kid reading it, but my second kid reading it and my third kid reading it. So what does Literati do to ensure that when our shoppers are coming through the book fair, that the product that they're buying is going to be well made and something that will really stand the test of time in a home library?
Yeah, of course, Amy. Literati makes sure that all of the books that we curate and feature at our fairs are of the highest quality. And that doesn't just mean great stories, which they are. We work with over 150 publishers and curate a diverse array of stories. But we also make sure that those books themselves, the physical books, are really well made. These are not books that will fall apart on you. They're the exact same quality you would get on the shelf at your local Barnes & Noble or your local indie. You know, really nice paper, really good binding, strong binding. So we're not, bringing in anything that will fall apart. You can definitely share it with multiple children in your household. But we also really want to make sure that we bring in a range of prices, which we do. So any kid with any budget can, walk away with something that they really love at a Literati book fair.
It's a relief because, as the person signing up for the book fair, I want to make sure that my families are, they enjoy, not just enjoy being there, but enjoy the books for years to come when they take those books home and they're able to enjoy them with all their kids. So, Aubrey, thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Of course. Happy to be here. Thanks, Amy.
Friends, I encourage you to tune in and learn all about Literati and their generous offer. Librarians who book their first Literati book fair before July 31st for this upcoming fall and mention the code UNITED will receive a $500 gift card from Titlewave. As always, there's a link in today's show notes. And now a word from our sponsor, Capstone. Capstone is an innovative publisher and education technology provider of children's content for school libraries, classrooms, and at-home learning. Home of the award-winning PebbleGo research database, Capstone has a passion for creating inspired learning and intellectual curiosity in children, and I'm so excited to be working with them. I'm so grateful to Capstone for their continued commitment to support the podcast in Season 5. They are offering listeners of School Librarians United a very special discount. Visit shop.capstonepub.com and use the code UNITED to get $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and Capstone interactive ebooks. That's code UNITED for $20 off an order of $100 or more for both print and ebooks on shop.capstonepub.com. And now for today's episode, ChatGPT and my conversation with Dr. Christopher Harris. Dr. Harris, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. I've been wanting to join your podcast ever since you spoke for our grant forum.
Well, and that was a really fantastic opportunity. It was a virtual conference. And am I correct that you received a grant that you had applied for to benefit the group that you serve, the BOCES? And I know we're going to talk a little bit about that when we talk about your role, but you sort of put together this amazing virtual conference, and it really was able to serve a very large group of school librarians. It was a free conference.
Yeah, I guess I already broke the rules of the grant because I failed to mention when I mentioned the grant, I was supposed to immediately say made possible in part through funding from the Institute of Museum and Library Services, which is the federal grant-making body that provides grants to museums and libraries. And they were, very gracious enough to fund us for a national leadership grant. And so, yeah, we were able to do that with a national scope and kind of run it out of our little local place.
Well, and, I think it's because of the unique role that you serve in New York that affords you this opportunity to impact as large a community of school librarians as you do. So, this is usually the part in the conversation where I say, hey, tell us about your library, tell us about the community you serve. And in this case, your role is really unique. Would you tell us, how do you connect with school librarians every day?
Yeah, it's definitely unique in the country. So New York State has this oddity of things called library systems. And a lot of other states do have, public library systems or multi-type library systems. But in addition to those, New York State also has school library systems. So at each one of our BOCES, which is a Board of Cooperative Educational Services, a regional educational services agency, each one of them and the large cities in the state has a school library system. And so it is a state-funded agency housed at the local educational services agency. And under state law, basically our job is to make libraries more awesome. We provide professional development, we do shared purchasing, we provide online resources, we do technical visits. And I've been in my position now for 19 years here at the BOCES as the school library system director. I kind of stumbled into it one day when my then boss, I was in instructional technology, and my then boss came down and said, "Hey, you like libraries, right?" And I said, "I love libraries. I'm married a librarian." And she said, "Well, have you ever thought about being a librarian?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I've done time working in libraries and volunteering in public libraries." She said, "Well, come on up, the interview team's waiting." So that's how I became a school library system director many, many years ago. But since then, I've really grown our program. And despite being in a rural area, we have 22 school districts that we serve, but only about 20,000 students total. And yet there are 5 of us certified school librarians on the team. So we're basically the second largest, collection of sort of administratively focused regional school library people that aren't in school libraries. New York City has, I think, one more person than us for all of those. But I talk to colleagues, directors from large city school districts around the country, and a lot of them, it's amazing that they're sort of trying to run these regional programs for 50, 60, 70,000 students, and it's to one person. And so we have this unique opportunity of having capacity. And I guess it's kind of that the concept of capacity. And I'm at the point in my career where I really want to focus on giving back to the library world. And so, yeah, we try and focus on doing things always to benefit, our local member librarians that are sort of our customers. But if we can do it as a national conference and get a grant for it, why not? Why not benefit everybody?
Well, and something that really caught my attention is the resource which you put together. And like so many of us in this profession do, rather than keep it behind a paywall, rather than keep it behind, some sort of, access, pay to access, you created a resource. In this case, friends, we're going to be talking about ChatGPT, and it is a fantastic resource. You put it in a Dropbox. And friends, I reached out to Chris. I said, Dr. Harris, can I see that? Is this okay? And not only did you give me and everyone full access to this Dropbox of resources, I then put it into a Google Drive because I know a lot of my listeners use a Google Drive as a platform for their work. And you just created this amazing resource and then shared it out with everybody, whether we live in New York or not.
I've learned so much from resources that others have shared. A lot of our web development that we do is on open source platforms. That's how the world should work. Basically, information costs today round down to zero. And so if there's an expertise that can be shared, there's no cost to me to share it. There's only potential benefit. And so because, I put it out there and shared it, I've had the opportunity now to go and do some other speaking engagements. And I've always been a huge supporter of sharing and letting everybody grow together.
Well, and I think it's not unusual for school librarians who are by day in the trenches, and we share things that we create while we're in the moment and we're at work. The difference is that when this issue of ChatGPT came onto the scene, I know for many of us, it was sort of waiting for us when we got back from our winter break. All of a sudden, you actually had already conceived and had put together this resource. And I'm guessing because you're not checking out books to students all day long, and you're not shelving, and there are a lot of things that those of us who work in the schools would be sort of mired in, and yet you could sort of give your attention and focus to this topic at a time when so many of us were sort of trying to play catch up, and then you shared it out. And so I'm glad that rather than having this conversation in January, when you first published this resource, we're doing this now. Our conversation is going to be shared in June, and there's so much that has happened in relationship to ChatGPT. So, I did a little bit of homework, but I'm so glad that we have an expert with us to join us today, friends. You're going to want to make sure that you make some time for our show notes, because Dr. Harris has been incredibly considerate and generous in the resources that he shared. On May 18th, just a few weeks ago, the New York Public Schools reversed a decision that they had made in January to ban student access to ChatGPT on school devices. Were you surprised or were you vindicated?
Well, I certainly wasn't surprised, because I've been talking to New York City School Library System. Melissa Jacobs is the School Library System Director down there, my colleague. And she already had me record a presentation on ChatGPT for librarians there that's going to come out actually probably a day before this drops. And so there'll be, when this drops, there'll be a brand new updated recording in the Dropbox folder. If you move it over to the Google folder, everybody will have access to it. I wasn't surprised. Like, that's the knee-jerk reaction, right? When new technology comes out, it's scary. I mean, ChatGPT is really scary for a lot of people. I've been going into schools and doing workshops locally, and I have teachers that are almost in tears because they are truly frightened about what artificial intelligence is bringing. People aren't sure how far they want to pursue this. And the approach that I've been taking is to say, that's great, but it's not going away. The chance of generative AI being blocked in schools is zero. The chance of us teaching about it and making changes to our instructional practices is somewhat above zero. It's not super high. It never is when it comes to change in education, but it's not zero at least. I just loaded up my email client on my phone today, and now they have plus AI. I mean, it is absolutely everywhere. It's going to be completely embedded. You are not going to be able to use the internet within 2 years without it having generative AI in some form. And so there is zero opportunity to actually block it.
Well, and I got to be honest, it made me realize how much AI is already in my life, and I don't care. I am grateful when, Amazon is trying to predict my next purchase. I am grateful when I'm, it's ironic, but I'm writing an email for work and my computer is trying to finish my email for me. And I am very aware that many of the emails that I read from my colleagues are predictive text. And, I was using a database and realizing that the topic finders and all of those are based on algorithms. And the reason why I can be that research person to my building is largely not because I'm working that fast, but because AI is doing all of these sort of tangential and related searches and tying them into our search. And I'm like, it's right there. And that's AI, friends. And I don't find that scary. So, I'm trying to be rational about this. So far, it's not sentient. There are the things that sci-fi movies have instilled in us a healthy respect of what could go terribly wrong. But I'm trying to look at this from the perspective of somebody who has the opportunity to work with educators in my building and find ways for us to do this in such a way that creates opportunity and is measured. So, I'm very grateful for the timing of this.
Let me throw out a comparison that might help you understand. So think about big data, right? Big data is scary. You realize that the databases, the companies out there online, they know everything about us, but they don't reveal it. I mean, really, it could be every time you go to the grocery store, you could go up to the checkout and check out, and then a little prompt could come up on the screen that says, hey, you forgot to buy toilet paper, and it's been this many days since you bought toilet paper. And we know that, you bought, some laxative products or something recently, so you probably use more toilet paper. Based on the food that you're buying, your diet's not great. You should have. They know everything about us, but they don't show their hand.
Sam's Club does.
The difference
Actually, I don't know. Do you go to Sam's Club? I use Sam's Clubs. Okay.
No,
yeah,
Costco.
See, and I use Costco, but Sam's Club was an early adopter of that scan and go and pay from your cart. And friends, I am not going to lie. Only recently, every time I try and check out of Sam's Club using my phone, using the app on my phone, it prompts me to go and buy the things that I most recently purchased in a previous visit. Hey, you didn't buy any of these. Are you sure you didn't mean to also grab these items? It was like, it was the last order I placed, or it was the top 10. I haven't looked at it too carefully. But I'm like, no. These are just the things I want. But that's AI. It's trying to get me to go back into the store and get the things that I usually buy, but no. I was like, I caught ya.
Big data can be very creepy, but companies have learned that they have to be very careful on how much they reveal their big data sources, or we get really creeped out really fast. And the thing is, algorithms have been working so long on the back end, so quietly, in music prediction and book prediction on Amazon. They've always been there. There's this great book from Douglas Rushkoff, Program or Be Programmed. And in there, he really tells us, you've got to understand what computers are doing and what algorithms are doing, because if you don't, they're going to take over your life and sort of run it for you on the back end. But all of a sudden, we went from these sort of halfway hidden algorithmic, exercises to generative AI. And generative AI is a huge step forward because it's not like, the silly chatbots on websites that never have the answer we're actually looking for. It's not even, like that predictive one word where, I don't know how to spell it, but if I get close enough, it'll tell me, or the next stuff. It writes whole stories. It writes whole essays. It does it in a way that is so easy, it starts to scare us. I think that's the difference.
Yeah, I think, I got to tell you, friends, I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but Dr. Harris has shared with us some fantastic resources. And I promise you, the reason why we're having this conversation now is we've sort of reached a point where many of us are going into summer vacation. We're going to have a chance to sort of step back from our practice, reflect on some of the things, not only that we've done, but also sort of put on our personal radar the things that we're hoping to do starting in the next year. And, I want to use this opportunity that we've got Dr. Harris here to give us some guidance as how we move forward. On January 12th, the New York Times published an article by Kevin Roos titled, "Don't Ban ChatGPT in Schools, Teach with It." And friends, of course, there's a link in the show notes. The last sentence reads, "This adjustment won't be easy. Sudden technological shifts rarely are. But who better to guide students into this strange new world than their teachers?" And friends, when I read that, I was like, oh, this is how we're going to shine. This is how librarians are going to shine. But I also want to insert there not only this idea of who better to teach and guide our students than their teachers, but than their school librarians, because we have a knack for finding opportunities to insert ourselves into the needs that our buildings may not realize they even have. And that is how we prove to be absolutely essential in the role that we serve in our buildings. They don't know they need us until we reveal that to them. And I think this is one of those perfect opportunities because, as school librarians, we can learn about this and be that resource. And the parallel to when we went into remote learning and virtual teaching during the pandemic is the same. It is similar in such that we didn't necessarily see this coming, and yet school librarians have a place in this chaos to be an opportunity to provide that guidance to the teachers and our community writ large.
Absolutely. I think it is essential. And one of the things that makes school librarians so well suited to address this is that one of the key new skills will be this prompt generation. So generating actually what you put in, not dissimilar to how we used to have to teach search engine terms because you had to more carefully construct your search terms. You have to carefully construct your prompts to get really good, useful information back out of the generative AIs. And really that involves questioning techniques and sort of understanding of topics and identifying keywords and phrases. These are all things that librarians teach.
So, your job is to support the school librarians across 22 districts in Western New York. And when ChatGPT became a part of the conversation in late 2022, early 2023, what did you do to equip the school librarians with the resources which would help them address the issues in their home districts?
First thing I did was try and go out and help them understand how it works. Because once we understand how technology works, it becomes much easier to teach with it, to use it. It builds up our confidence. So this was actually the basis of my dissertation research, was looking at the competence and confidence of primary school teachers in teaching computer science. And what I was able to show in my research is that when I gave them a test of computational thinking skills, their competence was quite high. They were able to take the test, 70, 80% with really no background knowledge of computer science. They were able to do it because this was a middle school computational thinking. It's just strong logical thinking. But when I asked them at the same time that they were taking the test that they were obviously competent about, if they would feel comfortable teaching it, every single one of them said, absolutely not. Their confidence was very low, like 10%. My intervention was I used with some of the teachers, I did professional development for them using Scratch Junior, which is about the least scary computer program out there. And for others, I used Robot Turtles, which is a board game. Now, the interesting thing was, and sort of following on with my hypothesis, the teachers with whom I used Robot Turtles, their confidence went through the roof. All of a sudden, because it was game-based and play-based and analog-based, because it didn't have that extra difficulty. Scratch Junior is not difficult, but there's that extra step of feeling confidence about the technology and confidence about the computer programming. Because we used a board game, their confidence went through the roof. So the first thing I did was go back into my bag of tricks, where I've done some writing for Rosen Publishing and some prior books with them on analog approaches to understanding computer science. And so I had a chatbot program, a paper chatbot that I had developed for their Kids Can Code series. And so I pulled that out and I said, look, ChatGPT is a chat. That's what the chat stands for. It's a chatbot. So let's understand on paper how a chatbot works. Let's try to, understand how generation works. The G in GPT is generative. How does that work? Well, we can do that using, like a game of telephone sort of story where everybody puts one word onto the story. And we do a group story, one word at a time going around. And we see how, some words would make a lot of sense and some words are going to completely break the story. And if we're all agreeing to play by the rules and make it a good story, we have to give a good word next. It could be a little crazy, it could go off the rails, but ChatGPT goes off the rails sometimes. But those are ways that are completely analog of helping teachers and librarians understand what's going on behind the scenes. And what's crazy is, I read Stephen Wolfram's book. He's the guy behind Wolfram Alpha. And Wolfram wrote a book, and you can buy it on Amazon, but it's also free on his website, and it'll be in the show notes. I'll make sure I add that. In there, basically, I don't want to give the whole thing away, but he says, we're not entirely sure how this works. This whole generative thing, it works. It's great that it works, but we're not entirely sure why it works. And to hear, Stephen Wolfram is one of the most brilliant, computer science minds on the planet say that was really crazy. And so when we can then break it down and put it simpler, I think it really helps. I always like to say, it's not alien technology. Human brains wrote the computer programs. Human brains are going to understand some of what's going on because they came from human brains. Computer science is a human way of thinking. It's not alien.
I think that, and I've heard other librarians say this, is, we didn't just curl up into the fetal position when Google came along. Librarians didn't just say, yep, you're right, we're no longer needed. I guess we should just go pick another profession. No, librarians are adept at sizing up a situation and seeing how we fit into this new dynamic. And, the word Luddite comes up to me all the time when I think about in the context of, our reaction has to be measured. I don't believe, I never believe, I still don't think the word banning can ever be used in the context that is ever going to be something that is sustainable or have a positive outcome. But in this case, the idea of trying to ban the ChatGPT, I know New York Public Schools was not the only. I know New York Public Schools, but also LA. There were school districts all around the country which said, that's it. We're just going to ban this. And any teacher will tell you that that's not going to work. But the reaction to go strictly paper only, I've heard that by teachers in my own building. They're like, you know what? So from now on, we're just not going to use computers at all. We're going to go, here's your paper, here's your pencil, and we're just going to, paper only assessments. And I'm thinking, okay, now you're just throwing out the bathwater with the baby or the baby with the bathwater, because that kind of response is damaging in ways that you can't even possibly realize when you recognize we're working with digital natives. My students never took a blue book, and I'm telling you, most of my listeners don't even know what a blue book is. But if you are of a certain age and you were at the university and you had to take an assessment, you know what a blue book is. So, talking about
the worst injustice, we had to buy the blue books.
I know. They were only 29 cents, but then we had to throw them in a pile and then pick up 2 other blue books that somebody else purchased, because that's how we were going to discourage copying. It's just, I'm sorry. There are just some people who would not understand this at all. And friends, I'm sure Wikipedia has an article on blue books, but it's what happens when you went to school in the 80s and 90s.
I have an answer for this. And the thing is, we all need to go back to our schools. If our schools are still in session now, or do it on group chats or whatever, Facebook, reach out to your math teacher friends. Because, math teachers already dealt with this. Photomath came out 6-7 years ago. Photomath, that's an app on your phone. You point it at the homework and you take a picture of your math homework. It does the homework for you. It shows the work and everything. So I'll go into schools and I'll tell the math teachers, say, hey, where are my math teachers? And say, I'm going to lift you up. I am going to just lift you up and make you heroes here. And say, hey, Photomath. Oh. Did you stop teaching math? No, of course we didn't stop teaching math. But the app, it does all the math for you. Well, yeah. So you didn't stop teaching math? No. Did you change how you assign and assess math work? Yes. Yes. They changed how they assigned and assessed the work. That's the answer. That's what teachers need to be looking at. We can't focus on the product. We have to focus on the process of learning. Math teachers dealt with it 7 years ago. And now it's here for humanities. And now humanities teachers have to deal with this. And librarians have to deal with this. We need to focus on process, and the process cannot be masquerading as an assembly line of products, because AI can generate every single product you throw at it. If you want to tell it to do a rough draft, you just tell it, do this in the style of a rough draft, and it'll add all the spelling errors that you want it to. It can do outlines. It can do note cards. It can do annotated bibliographies. It can write a first-person point of view essay on why I picked this topic. It can do all of those things. What it can't do is give a student the ability to engage in a conversation about their personal journey of learning. I don't care if they use ChatGPT. Think of it like Wikipedia. I may get in trouble for saying this. I remember 10 years ago, Wikipedia was the demon we didn't want to admit existed. But if they go to Wikipedia, I go to Wikipedia all the time. You just referenced Wikipedia. That's the starting point. It's not the ending point. And so if ChatGPT is the starting point and not the ending point, then why are we going to block that? But there has to be an ending point. Now, what this means in process is, any assignment that you care about enough to evaluate that assignment as evidence of learning, you're going to have to evaluate in a portfolio style. Even if it's a portfolio of one thing, it's going to be that conversational long-term assessment portfolio style of one assignment.
Well, and I got to tell you, this is no exaggeration. In the conversations I've heard, I've been part of, I've engaged, and I've seen some of this just in listening to teachers talk. And when I was saying, hey, ChatGPT, and I was putting out some very early sort of, articles that I was coming across of and things that we could do, alternative assignments that we're going to talk about a few of those. A couple of teachers who looked at me and said, it's not going to be a problem for me. I'm retiring this year. Or it's not going to be a problem for me. I'm retiring next year. And that's the solution? It's not. You can't sit there and look at your own personal situation and say, you know what? It doesn't affect me because X. And so that's why I'm so grateful that you're here. Let's talk about what school librarians can do, because we're really good at helping people. We excel at this. In fact, that's my 2-word elevator pitch. Support everyone. It doesn't matter what it is. Support everyone. So, we're exceptional at helping others. And in this case, this is on everybody's radar, including our administrators. So there's no better way to endear ourselves to our school community than to be a resource ourselves when it comes to how we can tackle this and in the light of what we do every day. What do you feel school librarians should be doing to prepare our teachers? So how do we best support our teachers at this time?
I think the best way for school librarians to support teachers is to go back to those basic understandings. They have to understand how this works. There's that famous Arthur C. Clarke quote, any technology sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. If they think this is magic, it's going to be frightening, it's going to be scary, it's going to be maybe even not my problem. But if they understand how it works, then they can start to use it as a tool. So we need to erase the magic. And that's using, the pencil and paper chatbot, breaking down what's actually going on. And even better, this integrates into the curriculum, because the first thing that you're going to break down with the chatbot is you're going to start talking about the different types of questions. Is this a what question, a why question, a where question, a who question? So now we're right into the ELA standards talking about types of questions. And so we have to really help them understand what's going on. And then we need to look and give them examples of generation. And we need to talk benefits and risks for them, because one thing I think librarians don't do enough of is look at adult learning theory. And adult learning theory is key because one of the most critical aspects of adult learning theory is what's in it for me. Overlap with marketing, which we're also not really great at in libraries and school libraries especially. What's in it for me? So what's in it for the teacher? So let's find their pain points and how this can be a solution to help them. So I'll talk about benefits. ChatGPT and generative AI is really good at dealing with text complexity. Text complexity is a pain because right now, if a teacher wants to differentiate a text that they're doing with reading, because you have students with special needs or students for whom English is not a first language, you need to modify the text complexity. Well, if you don't have a very expensive source that gives you the same text in multiple levels, now you can do that. You can load it into ChatGPT and ask it for text complexity at whatever level you want. So there's a huge pain point in a way for librarians to provide a solution. And once teachers start to hear these solutions, once they start to see things where it will directly impact their lives, it writes great lesson plans too, generative AI. I mean, what teacher hasn't felt the pain of, you wake up unexpectedly, very sick, you've got to get some sub plans in or you're going to get in big trouble. What a way to dash off some quick sub plans. Now, I'm not saying use them stock out of the generative AI. You've got to look them over, edit them. You cannot abdicate your professional responsibility because it's not 100%, but it's good enough and it gets you halfway. So identifying these pain points will bring teachers on board. Adult learners aren't going to engage in learning unless they think there's something in it for them. They have to see that point of need. So that's the first thing that librarians can do is identify the points of need and get them there. The second part of the question is, what do we need to do with students? Well, if we're not completely open and honest with students that the emergence of generative AI is going to have incredible and drastic changes on the nature of work within 3 to 5 years, if not sooner. IBM is already, they placed a hold on 7,500 positions that they're not hiring. They sort of said probably most of those will be attrition losses and just not filled. But those are 7,500 workers that IBM says can probably be replaced by AI. These are white jobs in creative fields or creation fields. These are the jobs that if you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have said those are the jobs that are safe. Computers can't do those jobs. And there have always been the jobs like, travel agent. That fell off really quickly. But these are jobs like lawyer. Because entry-level lawyers, if you're in a big firm, you spend a lot of time writing endless legal briefs. Well, ChatGPT writes a pretty good legal brief. Now, it makes up cases. There was just a situation where a lawyer had to apologize because he submitted a legal brief, and then it turned out ChatGPT had kind of invented some of the references there, has a really bad habit of doing that. So you can't, as I said, you can't abdicate your professional responsibility. But, it gave a perfect legal argument just with made-up cases.
Friends, I did include that link in the show notes because when I was doing some of my homework to get ready for this conversation with Dr. Harris, I came across, the BBC, the BBC always comes through. They came through, they're like, we've got this, a lawyer in the US who admitted to using AI for the work product that they were doing in such a way that, and then didn't do their due diligence because the assumption was on their part that, of course, that it's going to be accurate. And we've had those same conversations with our students when it comes to using Wikipedia. And I forgive me, I know that if you go to the bottom line of Wikipedia, every page of Wikipedia, it has a disclaimer. And when I teach my students about Wikipedia, I pull up that disclaimer page. Does ChatGPT have a disclaimer page? I'm trying to think.
Absolutely. On the very bottom of the ChatGPT screen, it says these results may be inaccurate. And I would change to, there will be inaccuracies in many of the results. And it's up to us as the humans to catch them.
I'm remembering some educators when Wikipedia was new on the scene, they would go in and they would manufacture erroneous entries and that were absolutely just peppered with, misinformation, and then have their students go to those pages, cite them willy-nilly, like absolutely put full faith into what they were reading on the screen. And it's always sort of funny and it's a memorable experience. But at the end of the day, the kids still need to be absolutely, judicious about what they see on the screen. And so do we, as adults in the equation, we have to be vigilant in how we decide to use ChatGPT. I've talked to teachers who easily pulled up lesson plans, and I think that there's always an opportunity for us to build upon something that's been generated and see that, what ChatGPT cannot possibly begin to appreciate are the circumstances that I teach in. And that's where we have to put our spin on whatever we rely on artificial intelligence to do, because we are experts at doing that anyway. Librarians regularly find, this is why I talk about the square peg in the round hole. The logo of my podcast has always been that librarians as educators have had to take whatever we are doing as educators and fit it into the circumstances that we work in. And the ChatGPT is no different, because we can use some of the work product, but then maneuver it into a way that supports our school community.
I really wanted to make sure that I came out strong speaking to our districts and the librarians in the district to say, we need to be a voice to advocate for making use of this, even if it's just on the staff side. We talked earlier about New York City banning and then rescinding their ban. I want to be clear that students are not going to be using ChatGPT right now to much extent. In New York State, we have a student data privacy law, Ed Law 2D, and there are real data privacy issues around ChatGPT. It's getting better because of what they need to do for the European Union. They are looking to have a business plan coming out soon that will give you more data privacy controls. So there's a possibility. But even then, the terms of service for the OpenAI website say 18 plus. If you ask ChatGPT itself, it says 13 plus. So there are some age limitations anyway. But we need to make sure we're talking about it because the kids are going to go use it at home. The parents are going to be accessing this and allowing them to use it if the parents know that it's out there. We need to talk to parents too, by the way. So I wanted to make sure that we were preparing the teachers to know what's going on. And this goes back to a lot of things we talked about around really understanding how it works. Because if the teachers understand how chatbots work, that they're not magic, if they understand how the generation aspect of generative AI works, that it's just math and saying what word would come next, and some words are much more likely to come next than others, then they don't have to be scared of it. Then they can understand what it's doing. There's this really great article that I read recently that said one of the biggest inequities of ChatGPT is that those people that would be most successful writing and doing work without ChatGPT are the same ones that are going to be more successful using ChatGPT. And so we need to continue teaching all of the aspects of writing, all of the aspects of question generation, all of those things that are such a core part of the school library standards and school library instruction, because they will help students and teachers, when we do professional development, be more successful understanding how AI works and what they need to do to be successful using it.
I think the challenge is that it is so tempting. I think that the temptation to find things quickly and easily and to, I think knowing the students I have, they're always looking to get something done more expediently in a faster way. And for them, they see this shortcut not so much as being dishonest. They're seeing this as I'm being resourceful. I am using this in the same way that I use Grammarly, in the same way that I use spell check, in the same way that I use all the shortcuts that come with doing anything online. I'm just being resourceful.
And I would add to that, in the same way that they use photo math. So, we hold up the math teachers because the math teachers dealt with this issue 6-7 years ago when photo math came out. And I asked them when I go out to do trainings, do you still teach math? Yes. Did you change how you assign and assess math work? Yes. Because they know if they give the kids 20, 30 homework problems, the chances that they're going to use photo math go way up. If you focus on a few problems and deeper understanding, kids are more likely to put stuff in. Look, last year I had this amazing opportunity to serve as basically a high school principal. So I was director of our online learning academy for middle and high school students for our region, and indeed across, we had students from across New York State. Did the students sometimes plagiarize? Yes, because all the answers were online. That's what we told them. So look, we're using this online curriculum. I know all the answers are online. I can tell you where to go look for them because we're going to go to the same places because the answers that are given, it's going to be obvious that this was not your work. It's going to be very obvious because we're going to get to know you. We're going to know this wasn't your work. And I kept telling them, it's like golf. You can cheat all day long in golf. And you know what? You're going to look really stupid when someone comes up and says, well, let's play. And you swing and you whiff on the ball. You get out of education what you put into it. And if they want to put the work into it, they'll get something out of it. I use ChatGPT constantly now. It is part of my workflow. But as the article said, I was already a very strong writer, and I'm getting out from ChatGPT what I put into it. I'm not just giving over all of my work to ChatGPT. I'm using, in the words of like grant writing, I'm supplementing, not supplanting my workflow. I'm not asking ChatGPT to write an op-ed about book challenges in libraries. I'm giving it a full paragraph. Now, what's great about it is I can give it a messy paragraph with turns of phrase and words and ideas. I don't have to write coherent sentences, but I have to give it enough content that it's going to write what I want it to write. I'm the one in control. This is Douglas Rushcroft. Program or be programmed. Use ChatGPT or be used by it. I'm in control. That is going to be my absolute bottom line. Is I'm the one in control here.
I was reading as I was doing my homework too, and anytime something was like AI, ChatGPT, and this was a particular article, and they were interviewing college students who were just, a couple years older than the students I work with every day. And, they said in there, this is another innovation in technology. I need to know what the parameters are. They're looking for the educators to establish what is and isn't permissible in an educational setting. Obviously, there are no rules when it comes to your personal edification. If you're doing your own exploration, if you're just playing around, and you're doing this because it's entertaining, it's fun to see what AI can do. But if you have a grade that's hanging in the balance, like most of our students do when they're facing a situation where they're using ChatGPT, I think we owe it to them to create some boundaries when it comes to just at what point are you getting too close to crossing that line? What is the line? Because I think the more I think about it, I'm asking myself the same question. Because I have basically forgotten to learn how to spell because I don't have to worry about spelling. I grew up all the way through I think almost graduate school. There was no spell check in my years of K-12 education. There was no spell check. But now, something that had meant the difference between a passing grade and a questionable grade, that's just going to be automatically taken care of when I do my workflow because I rely on spell check. Yes, newsflash, friends, I can't spell, but I know I can't spell. So again, when it comes to like AI, I think students deserve to know where the line is. And unfortunately, some of them are willing to risk a grade if it means they can take a couple shortcuts and then find out afterwards, yeah, you crossed the line. Well, where was the line?
And this is classic game theory. Stephen Johnson's book, Everything Bad is Good for You, he talks about probing and telescoping. This is what kids do. This is what gamers do. When they go into a new game, they probe, they test all the limits. They see, can I do this? Can I do that? Can I get off the screen? Can I, they're going to constantly be probing. The best way out of that is to give them examples, to show them, hey, here's how we can use ChatGPT. Here's where we're going to use it to do this part of the work. But this other part of the work is too important to leave to ChatGPT. It's the same argument with calculators. We've dealt with all of these. We've dealt with this. I had to deal with this growing up as someone who's basically functionally dysgraphic. I cannot handwrite. I'm under orders at work that I am not to handwrite anything for that anybody else in the outside sphere will ever see. I am under orders from my supervisor. I'm not to handwrite anything. It is that bad. I've been using, computers in my schoolwork since I was in third grade.
I really am so grateful for all the incredible resources. And friends, once again, I'll say this, Dr. Harris put together this amazing core resources for not just the school librarians he supports in the BOCES region that he oversees, but has made it available for any school librarian to take advantage of. And so he created this Dropbox of resources. And so what I asked if I could have permission to put it into a Google Drive, because I know a lot of my listeners use a Google platform when it comes to doing work. And so, friends, if you look in the show notes, you're going to find this fantastic resource, which was assembled by Dr. Harris, I moved it into a Google Drive equivalent. Two of those things are fascinating because they don't have anything really to do. At first glance, I was like, wait, this isn't for school librarians. You did ChatGPT for instructional leaders and ChatGPT for school administrators. And I love that you did this. I'm hoping you'll explain your rationale to our listeners.
Yeah, well, those are the decision makers. And they hold the purse strings in the schools. And so anytime that we can support our administrative colleagues in their learning and understanding, that empowers libraries, that shows the value that librarians add. That was one of the really big messages that we tried to focus on in the Libraries.today grant work that we're just wrapping up, is that libraries added a lot of value during the pandemic. But if we didn't stand up and own it, if we didn't say this is the value that we added, it wasn't always recognized. So anytime that we can speak to our administrators and have a library solution to one of their problems, that's, go for it, use it, own it, be the expert. And so this is really in our wheelhouse, artificial intelligence, because it's dealing with information, it's dealing with questioning, it's dealing with, information seeking and using practices. You said something earlier about finding the answer. And I think that's going to be one of the real hallmarks of this shift into an AI-driven internet world, is search engines are going to go away. And they're going to be replaced with answer engines. There's the old saying, librarians search and users find. There's a reason why my license plate is search. It's because it's what we do. We constantly dig deeper and deeper and deeper. Even when we get the answer, we want to know, well, is there a different answer? Is there a better answer? Is there another answer? And users just want to find. They just want the answer that's right there, that's good enough, that's okay for right now. Administrators, principals especially, are under so much pressure. And the workload is astronomical, that the pressure is real. So if they can understand how to use this tool, if they can have an instructional leadership partner in the school library that says, I understand the pressures that you're under, and I can be your building level partner for delivering professional development around it, it's a huge weight lifted from the principal. So I wanted to make sure that we were speaking their language, that librarians everywhere had those types of resources.
Well, and I really like that you did that, because the first thing I thought was, because this was before you and I had even spoken, I was like, you know what? I cannot wait to put this in an email and send it to my administrators, not just at the building level, but at the district level. Because in my district, I am the only school librarian. And then to have something, and keep in mind, friends, of course, Dr. Harris's name is on this resource. He is the creator of these two, of all the things that you put together in this amazing Dropbox / Google Drive. But I can't wait to share it, because I'm going to say, look, as the school librarian, finding this incredible reference that you can use to utilize ChatGPT in such a way that helps you do your job, because it still requires, and this sort of ties into my next sort of observation, because it truly still requires the human component. It still requires the person who's putting these inquiries into ChatGPT to then extrapolate and then to apply it to our circumstances. It's not sentient. ChatGPT cannot appreciate all the criteria by which we are, and sort of constraints and the circumstances that we function in. We cannot, regardless of how many factors we put into this search in ChatGPT, it can never begin to understand all of the stressors that will play a role in our decision-making as the humans, the human factor. So I love this. And so, friends, do make sure that you take a look at this next item, which Dr. Harris created, ChatGPT prompts for school librarians, because every single one of these utilizes that fact-finding feature that ChatGPT has, but it requires the expertise of a school librarian, a trained, certified school librarian, to apply the results of that search to our particular set of circumstances.
Yeah, I think that's so important. I mean, I guess I would push back a little bit and say there could come a point in time if we reject all privacy controls and feed the AI enough information about all of our students. Like, again, I wouldn't recommend this because this circumvents all privacy factors. But big data is really scary when we turn it loose. And it could become more informed. That's actually one of the things that can make ChatGPT responses much more usable is if you preload the conversation. So each one of those little conversations that you have with ChatGPT is a separate iteration, and no information flows, so they say, between them. And so you're kind of, every time you click new chat, you're starting with sort of a blank slate that doesn't know any of your background information. So if you feed more information in, so if you wanted to evaluate writing, if you feed all the background information in, it will do a much better job. So it could get there. But at the end of the day, it's still a computer program, and it's still not thinking about an answer. It's using math to predict what word would come next. And so in a writing task, it's much easier to predict what word will come next because you're extending on from, say, a main idea, a title, a topic sentence, something like that. But when you're truly answering a question, it's much harder because there are, it's not that there are good, better, best. There's right and there's wrong. And that's where ChatGPT starts making stuff up when it's trying to go on the side of right and answering your question for you. And then it can't because it doesn't have the background knowledge. So yeah, prompts for librarians are there, but the librarian has to check them all.
That's true. The assumption that everything coming out of ChatGPT is correct, we simply cannot just sit back and sort of rest on our laurels and assume everything that comes out of this is going to be factually accurate, because that's where people are really going to run into some trouble. This is such a moving target ever since it was sort of on the larger public's radar, because, I know I became aware of this in right after the break, and it was sort of mid-January, and we're talking now in June. It is, I feel like this is going to be on our radar moving forward forever, because we don't get to ignore that it exists. It needs to be factored into the things, and not just school librarians, but obviously teachers as well. Whenever we start putting together anything that we do in the classroom, appreciating that in just the same way that a Google search can answer the questions that you put out on a worksheet to your classroom, so too can ChatGPT start to construct those writing assignments that have been sort of created for the students to prepare. This is always going to be a part of the conversation moving forward.
This is our man on the moon. Indeed, this is our printing press moment. I mean, it really is. This is and the advances that took place in a relatively short time. I mean, yeah, we're talking 6-8 months since ChatGPT sprang on the scene, version 3 release, but really the advances that have come in the last 5 years are absolutely astronomical. If you had asked me 5 years ago, I would have said there is no way that AI is taking over white collar creative tasks. In it's going to be another 20 years, and it came out of nowhere, and really did it. So it's absolutely, this is going to change the nature of work.
I was so excited to know you and I were going to have this conversation, and then obviously get to share it with our listeners. The next day, I saw our computer science teacher, and I said, "Hey, I looked at some of the resources that we're going to put in the show notes. Thank you so much." And one of them is Stephen Wolfram's writings. And what is ChatGPT doing, and why does it work? And I know there are others that are listening who have heard of Wolfram and this is fantastic. Would you tell us a little bit about why you shared this in the resources today?
Yeah, so this is Stephen Wolfram behind Wolfram Alpha, and it's an amazing book. It came out in late February. You can buy it on Amazon, but then after I bought it and read it, I discovered that it was available online as well, where he makes it freely available. What's so impressive about it is that it includes all kinds of little clickable interactives where you can load these up into the free, playground, sandbox version of Wolfram Alpha Notebook, and you can interact with ChatGPT version 2. So the Wolfram Alpha or the Wolfram Notebook will load up and run version 2 of ChatGPT, which is much smaller. And that gives you a chance to see how it works on the back end, to really explore the math and the computer science that goes into this. You can feed it a starter sentence, and see what word would come next. It's a great activity to do with your class to help them understand what's going on. You can kind of do one of those group stories where everybody adds a next word or a next sentence. And, they can go off the rails and be a little silly, a little crazy. But if you're actually trying to write a good story going round robin one word at a time, that's what ChatGPT is doing. And so to see that, in math and computer science, and then to experience it in an analog environment can just do wonders for helping teachers, students, and everybody else understand what's happening. Now, I'm going to be totally honest. There were points of time in that book where my eyes glazed over, and I just had to move on, turn the page, and hope I could get back on track with it. I have a lot of computational knowledge and computational intelligence. I'm not a total computer scientist. So don't be too afraid to just move on and get what you can get. I think one of the most telling parts of the book is Stephen Wolfram coming out and admitting they're not entirely sure how or why this works. It works, but they're not sure why or how. And so some of this is just trying it and seeing if it works and then going on.
So stay tuned is what you're saying. Stay tuned.
Stay tuned, learn along, and play. Play is such a great aspect of learning. And this is a way to play and learn along with the computer program.
Dr. Harris, I am so grateful that you were able to take time out of your busy day. And I'm grateful also your resources have a work email on there because you are a resource. And in doing so, you're a resource to our listeners and to the people that we support. How can we, encounter, are you on social media? Would you feel comfortable sharing that? Or what would you like to do in terms of if listeners want to get, what is your preferred method of being contacted if listeners would like to follow up with you?
I am horrible at social media. You are more than welcome to follow me. I am absolutely awful at it. I've been trying to engage a little bit more in LinkedIn. My Twitter handle there, Dr. Chris Harris. LinkedIn is probably a much better bet. I'm one of those old people, I guess, where email works for me. So email is great. Feel free to email me at the work address that's on any of those resources, or my home address works really nicely as well, chris@playplaylearn.com. And that'll get to me. And do feel free to reach out. Make use of these resources. I'm sharing them because it's the right thing to do. We all, learn from each other. I wouldn't have an understanding if Stephen Wolfram didn't share his book and share his knowledge. And that helped me learn more. So they're under a full, remix license. Some amazing librarians from Durham Public Schools in North Carolina remixed it and changed. And I shared with them my full slide deck, and I'm happy to share with anybody. I love when people let me know what they did with the resources or how they changed them up and made them work. So let's just keep sharing all the learning.
Dr. Harris, I hope you have a fantastic summer. I know you're always working, but I hope you have a chance to rest. And I look forward to our paths crossing in the future.
Anytime. I really appreciate, again, your coming and being part of the Libraries.Today work. And, let me know if you want me to come on and ramble on again sometime in the future.
Have a great evening. Thanks so much, Dr. Harris.
Thank you.
I I am so grateful to Dr. Harris for taking time out of his busy schedule to join us for what I hope will be the first of a series of episodes addressing the ever-evolving challenge of technology like ChatGPT. These episodes are something of a snapshot in time of where we currently are right now, and I invite others to consider what they can contribute to this conversation. If you found this episode helpful, please share it out with your team, your PLN, and on social media. Be sure to follow on your favorite podcatcher so you'll never miss an episode. And if you really like listening today, consider leaving a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Reviews help others find us. A couple friendly reminders, friends. Do use the code UNITED to take advantage of Capstone's generous $20 discount off an order of $100 or more, and schedule your first Literati Book Fair by July 31st for this fall 2023 and receive a $500 Titlewave gift card. As always, there are links in the show notes. The topic of our next episode will be missing books and my conversation with Fallon Faroki and Steve Tatro. I hope you will tune in.